Good evening. The Biden-Suga summit has concluded with a joint assertion by the two leaders expressing concern over the use of coercion by China. Our in focus tonight is Biden-Suga summit. Leaders call out Chinese coercion. Also on the show tonight, government's comprehensive response to COVID-19 pandemic. Our talking point would be tackling COVID. Government of India pulls out all stops. That and more in this edition of News Night. I'm Manmohan Bhattacharya. Let's get started with the headlines. Prime Minister Narendra Modi holds a high-level meeting to review the COVID-19 situation and vaccination situation in the country. Prime Minister reaches out to saints and seers in Haridwar, requests them to keep Kumbh symbolic. Acharya Mahamandaleshwar Pujya Swami Avdeshanand Giri Ji announces ceremonial closure to Mahakumbh for Juna Akhada. Union Health Minister reviews availability of oxygen, ventilators, manpower, medicines, hospital beds with 11 states and union territories reporting surge in COVID-19 cases, assures continued support of central government in their fight against COVID-19. Double mutant strain in Maharashtra also discussed. Responding to requests by state governments, the union government urges companies manufacturing remdesivir to cap prices. 7 companies announce a reduction in rates. The drug will now be available in a price range between 899 rupees and 3,490 rupees. Union Health Minister Dr. Harshvardhan speaks to Maharashtra Chief Minister Uddhav Thackeray, assures adequate uninterrupted supply of medical oxygen and all possible support on healthcare infrastructure, medicines and therapeutics. Additional 1,121 ventilators being rushed to the state. Union Ministers Mansukh Mandavia and Piyush Goyal hit out at Maharashtra Chief Minister for playing petty politics over availability of oxygen and remdesivir drug. Weekend lockdown observed by many states to control the surge of COVID-19 infections. Essential services were functional in cities like Mumbai, Bhopal and Delhi. In Chhattisgarh's capital Raipur, complete lockdown till the 26th of April. Bhopal and Indore extend corona curfew till 23rd April. In UP, all establishments to remain closed on Sunday. Global coronavirus death toll passes 3 million according to a tally by Johns Hopkins University. Over 1 million people have died in the 3 months since mid-January when the death toll reached the last grim milestone of the 2nd million. US President Joe Biden holds first in-person bilateral summit with Japanese Prime Minister Suga at the White House. Leaders call out China for coercion, reiterate commitment to build a free and open Indo-Pacific. Chinese embassy in the US hits back, alleges gross interference in China's internal affairs. Prince Philip's funeral held at St. George's Chapel on grounds of Windsor Castle. His coffin was borne on a specially modified Land Rover hearse, followed on foot by a procession of senior royals, including Prince Charles and Princes William and Harry. The Duke of Edinburgh and husband of Queen Elizabeth II died on 9th April at the age of 99. Our lead story tonight, hours after Prime Minister Narendra Modi appealed that the Kumbh Mela in Uttarakhand's Haridwar should only be symbolic amid an unprecedented increase in coronavirus cases across the country, Swami Avdeshanand Giri, one of the top seers in the country, announced an early end to the month-long mega festival for Juna Akhada. Meanwhile, continuing the spate of meetings with states to help them curb the surging wave of COVID-19 infections, Union Health Minister Dr. Harshvardhan reviewed the availability of oxygen, ventilators, manpower, medicines and hospital beds with 11 states and union territories reporting a surge in cases. He suggested them to plan an increase in COVID hospitals and other infrastructure in advance, map major cities or districts to medical colleges, plan large containment zones for community quarantine and to identify positive cases with early symptoms.
Union Health Minister Dr. Harshvardhan chaired a high-level COVID review meeting with health ministers of 11 worst affected states and union territories. All the 11 states and UTs have already crossed their highest reported daily case threshold, with some districts like Mumbai, Nagpur, Pune, Nashik, Thane, Lucknow, Raipur, Ahmedabad and Aurangabad also following the same pattern. The meeting lasted for more than 3 hours.
हमारे रिकॉर्ड्स के हिसाब से स्टेट्स के पास 1,58,00,000 डोजेज हैं और जो कि एक हफ्ते के अंदर पाइपलाइन के अंदर सप्लाई के अंदर हैं वो 1,16,84,000 डोजेज हैं.
The state health ministers brought up issues of stepping up supply of remdesivir in hospitals, adding to the ventilator stock and enhanced supply of vaccine doses. Many of them raised the issue of capping of prices of essential drugs like remdesivir, which has been sold in the black market at exorbitant prices. Double mutant strain in Maharashtra was a key point of concern. The Delhi government requested for additional beds in central government hospitals, as was done in 2020, to help tide over the emergent health crisis. Responding swiftly, the union government urged companies manufacturing remdesivir to cap prices. 7 companies have announced a reduction in rates. The drug will now be available in a price range between 899 rupees and 3,490 rupees. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Saturday morning urged that Kumbh Mela should now only be symbolic amid Corona crisis. In a tweet, he spoke to Acharya Mahamandaleshwar Pujya Swami Avdeshanand Girji and inquired about the health of all saints. Sant Samaj is cooperating fully with the administration. I requested him to keep Kumbh symbolic from now on, as 2 Shahi Snans have already taken place. This will strengthen the fight against the pandemic. Responding positively to the Prime Minister's call, Swami Advaishanand Giri of the Juna Akhada said that Kumbh Mela will now be symbolic. On the other hand, most states have tightened restrictions for the next 15 days under the Break the Chain campaign. In Maharashtra, Pune looked deserted with very few people stepping out of home. In Mumbai too, roads were empty. Locals ran as usual. Gujarat is also in the list of 10 states most affected by COVID-19. There have been 8,920 new cases in the last 24 hours. Meanwhile, in Ahmedabad, local businessmen have taken the initiative to declare a self-imposed lockdown.
2 दिन के लिए बंद है अभी, शनि रवि 2 दिन बंद रखा है.
कोरोना के हिसाब से हमने 2 दिन बंद रखा है. पूरे वहाँ से दूर से पब्लिक आती है तो कोरोना ना फैले हिसाब से बहुत ज़्यादा भीड़ होती है, हिसाब से 2 दिन के हम बंद रखा है.
Delhi ranks third in the most affected states and 19,486 new cases were reported in the last 24 hours. Weekend curfew remained in force to prevent infection and it will continue till 5 a.m. on Monday.
इसके तहत जो है पार्शियल लॉकडाउन है, जो एसेंशियल सर्विसेज हैं वो चल रही हैं और साथ साथ उनको जो सपोर्ट करने वाले हैं उनको ई पासेस द्वारा उनको सपोर्ट किया जा रहा है.
Talking about Uttar Pradesh, it ranks second in terms of new cases. 27,360 new cases were reported and 103 people died there over the last 24 hours. Night curfews continue in 10 cities including Varanasi, Kanpur, Ghaziabad, besides capital Lucknow. Apart from this, markets, arts, business establishments, offices in urban and rural areas will be closed every Sunday till May 15th under the weekly ban.
108 की आधी एम्बुलेंसेज केवल कोविड के मरीजों के लिए उपलब्ध इस्तेमाल करने के लिए वो उपलब्ध कराया कराने को निर्देशित किया. निगरानी समितियां को एक्टिव करने का निर्देश दिया. इसके अतिरिक्त उन्होंने हर गांव और हर नगर में क्वारंटीन सेंटर बनाने के निर्देश दिए. जो बाहर से लोग आ रहे हैं, दूसरे प्रदेशों से लोग आ रहे हैं, ऐसे प्रदेशों में जहाँ पर संक्रमण की दर अधिक है, उनको टेस्ट करके उनको क्वारंटीन सेंटर में रखा जाएगा.
A review meeting on the status of COVID-19 in Karnataka was held under the chairmanship of the State Home Minister Basavaraj Bommai, while Bihar Governor Phaggu Chauhan held a meeting with all parties to discuss the challenge of the pandemic. In Madhya Pradesh, Corona curfew has been extended till 26th of April in Bhopal and Ujjain. Indore will also be under Corona curfew for 5 days from 19th to 23rd of this month. With Nitendra Singh, Bureau Report, DD India.
Well, a day after Prime Minister Narendra Modi appealed for synergy between the centre and states to tackle COVID-19, petty politics raised its head, with Maharashtra Minister Nawab Malik alleging that the central government was not allowing Remdesivir drug producing companies to sell the export-bound stock in Maharashtra. Denying that charge, Union Minister Mansukh Mandaviya said that no such consignment is stuck with manufacturers of Remdesivir. Union Minister Piyush Goyal too hit back at Maharashtra government over Chief Minister Uddhav Thakere's statements on availability of oxygen in the state. Meanwhile, Union Health Minister Dr. Harshvardhan spoke to the Maharashtra Chief Minister and assured him of adequate, uninterrupted supply of medical oxygen and all possible support on healthcare infrastructure, medicines and therapeutics to the state. Even amidst the challenge of the surging coronavirus pandemic, some parties are not holding back from playing politics. Nationalist Congress Party leader and State Minister Nawab Malik has alleged that the central government was not allowing Remdesivir producing companies to sell the export-bound stock in Maharashtra. The minister also warned that Maharashtra government will have no choice but to seize the stock of Remdesivir from these exporters and supply it to the needy. Quashing these allegations, Union Minister Mansukh Mandaviya said, "Tweets by Nawab Malik are shocking. It is full of half-truths and lies, and the threats issued are unacceptable. He is unaware of the ground situation. Government of India has been in active contact with officers of the GOM and is assisting with supply of Remdesivir in every manner. We are doubling the production in the country and have given express permission to 20 more plants since the 12th of April to manufacture. Ensuring adequate supply of Remdesivir to the people of Maharashtra remains our priority. As per the government's record, there is only one export-oriented unit and one in SEZ. We have reached out to the manufacturers of Remdesivir. No such consignment is stuck." Meanwhile, on the issue of oxygen supply, Union Health Minister Dr. Harshvardhan spoke to Maharashtra Chief Minister Uddhav Thackeray, reassured Office of Uddhav Thackeray of adequate and uninterrupted supply of medical oxygen and all possible support with respect to healthcare infrastructure, medicines and therapeutics. Additional 1,121 ventilators are also being rushed to them given the surge in cases. Discussed with Office of Uddhav Thackeray regarding further stringent actions to be taken for containment, surveillance and treatment of COVID-19 cases. Reiterated the need to focus on the 5 pillars: test, track, treat, COVID-appropriate behavior and vaccination to tide over the emergent health crisis. Union Minister Piyush Goyal had earlier expressed anguish in a series of tweets over Maharashtra Chief Minister Uddhav Thakere's statements on availability of oxygen. He tweeted, "Saddened to see Office of Uddhav Thakere's gimmicks on oxygen. Government of India with all stakeholders is ensuring maximum oxygen production in India. We are currently producing 110% of oxygen generating capacity and diverting all available oxygen from industrial use to medical use. Maharashtra has so far received the highest quantity of oxygen in India. Centre is in daily touch with state governments to assess their needs and help them in best possible manner." With this background, shocked and saddened to see petty politics being played by Office of Uddhav Thackeray. He needs to stop his daily dose of shameless politics and take responsibility. With both Prime Minister Narendra Modi as well as Union Health Minister Dr. Harshvardhan constantly taking review meetings as well as interacting with state governments, there is little need to create controversies over healthcare infrastructure amidst the pandemic. Bureau Report, DD India. And that brings us to our In Focus tonight. Tackling COVID, Government of India pulls out all stops. To discuss that, we will soon be joined by Dr. M.C. Mishra, Senior Surgeon and former Director AIIMS. But joining us now is Dr. Rajinder K. Dhameja. He's expert of public health and Head of Department Neurology, Lady Hardinge Medical College. Dr. Dhameja, welcome to Newsnight. Let me begin with the appeal made by Prime Minister Narendra Modi this morning, where he asked for symbolic participation only in the Haridwar Kumbh. And we've seen positive response come in to that appeal. What would you emphasize at this point in time? Is it the need of the hour for people to practice COVID-appropriate behavior, including social distancing, and ensuring that they are tested if there is any fear or doubt that they have about their health condition, even in such places?
Good evening and thanks for having me on the show. I absolutely agree with you, and I welcome Prime Minister's step to appeal to all the stakeholders for the virtual or the symbolic celebrations of these religious festivals like Kumbh. I think the biology or the science of COVID-19 has taught us that it's not only the virus ability or its virulence or its the mutants. It's much more than that. It's how the virus and human society interact with each other that gives rise to the infectivity or infections. That's very important, how we react with the virus or society and the virus interact with each other. So this means that the larger the people interaction with each other would definitely a possibility of more infections like these gatherings. So obviously the Prime Minister is absolutely right in appealing to these to avoid these mass gatherings. So having said that, there are other things, the responsibility of the people also not to gather in large numbers, whether there are weddings or there are other social functions or other avenues of coming in contact with each other very closely. So I would appeal, I would endorse the views of the Prime Minister. I would request everyone that do not go outside and gather in large numbers unless it is very, very, important going out, not in large, not even in large numbers, even in going out, if it is important, then only go out. That's number one thing. The number two thing is that, these people who have gone there to large gatherings, once they go back to their hometowns and other cities, they may be carrying viruses. So obviously, they should self-isolate themselves to their homes for next 1 week to 10 days so that the infection does not spread to the other members of the society. And number two is, if they have slightest symptom, they should test themselves. The science has shown us that if the people are aware of their infectivity status or the positivity status, they tend to behave more responsibly, and they tend to adhere to the public health measures, and they become a little more vigilant also. And the third thing is that in case the people have come back and they are symptomatic, they should consult their doctors and adhere to all the basic precautions which we have been talking about in the last 15 months. So it's very, very important to adhere to the social distancing. Even if you are in a place where the other people are there in close vicinity, try to make them understand if somebody is not wearing the mask, it is our duty to tell them for our own health and for their own health and for the health of the others to wear the mask properly, fittingly, and maintain a social distancing. That's very, very crucial at this stage of pandemic.
Okay. Dr. Mishra is also joining us. Dr. Mishra, we heard Dr. Dhameja spell out the protocol that should be followed by devotees, pilgrims and other participants in the Haridwar Kumbh. There was a meeting also that Union Health Minister Dr. Harshvardhan took with 11 states which are facing the maximum burden of COVID-19 cases, and he made a number of suggestions. He said that focus on the prominent cities and districts and map them to medical colleges. He also said that plan a large containment zones for community quarantine and that test as much as possible so that you are aware of positive cases even if there are any early symptoms. Are these crucial elements of anti-COVID strategy that any state should adopt?
Yes, I think every state has to wake up to this call where the supply of resources is diminishing and demand is increasing. And every day we are having increased number of COVID positive individuals flocking to the hospitals for a bed, for a ICU bed, but not necessarily each one of them needs hospital admission. So what I feel, in addition to what has already been outlined, there could be helplines established in every state where the telephone call or tele-video conferencing can be obtained by the individuals who are COVID positive, and they are given extensive or exhaustive counseling. Because at this point of time, what we need to do, first of all, what Dr. Dhameja said, emphasize upon that people don't get the infection. That is the best thing which can happen to anyone. And if they get infection, then they need to be counseled how to monitor their health at home. and majority of them will recover without any consequence of COVID. Only those individuals, either some elderly population or people with comorbidities like diabetes, hypertension, bronchial asthma, and also those who are immunosuppressed on immunosuppressive medication, somebody who has undergone kidney transplant or other transplants, and cancer, chemotherapy, etc. They should monitor their oxygen at home, and if their oxygen levels are above 94%, there is nothing to worry. And if it falls down below that, then they can organize to get oxygen at home, or then close by healthcare facility they can approach. Although what we are getting information that most healthcare facilities are actually working to full occupancy, and actually there is bed availability in both non-ICU as well as ICU, and high dependency units are full and not available. So that is where the challenge lies for all of us, that those who can be quarantined in what you said in community quarantine centers or at home should not occupy hospital beds just because of panic. And that is where counseling does come handy. If we can reassure these individuals that you are okay, you just bring down your temperature, monitor your oxygen level, take these medications, drink plenty of fluids, eat normal food, and you will be fine. And then those whose oxygen level goes down may only approach the hospital healthcare facility where they can be dealt with. So that is something which we need to disseminate extensively, and we cannot overemphasize this point, that at this point of time, howsoever we create resources, they'll fall short. And oxygen shortage, drug shortage, bed shortage, ICU bed shortage, and all that. So I think in the pandemic situation, the demand is going to be high, supply is limited. Even if we enhance the capacity, still it will be limited. It can't be unlimited. And that is where the challenge lies for the government, for the people, and for the healthcare, overall healthcare infrastructure.
Right. In fact, I remember that Prime Minister had once said that you cannot supply vaccines, all of them, to just one state. It is important to ensure that every state has adequate availability of vaccines. On that issue also, the Home Minister spoke to states today and said that there is no vaccine shortage. Dr. Dhameja, I'll come to you on this. He said 1 crore 58 lakh doses are still available with states. Another 1 crore 16 lakh 84,000 are in the pipeline and they'll be delivered next week. Stocks of each state are replenished after 7 days. The small states, that is. For big states, the period is around 4 days. So we already have 2 indigenous vaccines that are being administered in the COVID-19 vaccination drive. Approval has been given to Sputnik V. In principle, approval has been given to foreign-produced vaccines. So would you say that India is quite at a satisfactory position when it comes to vaccine availability, and that there is really no dearth of vaccines?
I think so. I would agree to your comments that we have enough vaccines, and there has to be an equitable distribution to all the states fighting with the COVID-19 pandemic. So both the vaccines which we are being manufactured in India are in a position to supply enough for next few days. Not only this, the government has also augmenting the manufacturing facilities, particularly of Bharat Biotech with the Covaxin, and government has released fundings also to enhance the capacity of Covaxin vaccine. Not only this, we have also tied up or the approvals from the other countries, the vaccines approved in other countries like US, UK, Japan, and the European Union. So the 2 particular vaccines I wish to talk about, rather 3. Sputnik V has already undergone bridging trial and has been approved, and there are ties up with this Dr. Reddy's lab for the initial distribution of 100 million doses, which will be imported, and then by the end of next month we will be producing our own Sputnik V vaccine. The JJ vaccine has already tied up with BE biological company, which will also start manufacturing, and so has the other vaccine with the imported vaccines like the Novavax, which has a tie-up with the Serum Institute of India. So both these vaccines will be manufactured in India at some stage in next few weeks or 2 months. So obviously we will have enough supply of vaccine for individuals to come and take the jab. And I would appeal that whenever your turn comes, you become eligible, please come and take the vaccination, as vaccination is a definite tool to not only to save lives, but also to contain the pandemic both ways. So the both priorities at the moment, saving lives, you need to have the vaccine that will save your life, and perhaps they will also reduce the transmissibility or the infection in the community also. So both ways, the vaccination is very, very important in addition to the COVID appropriate behavior, which we have been telling the people for last 1 year.
Dr. Mishra, on the indiscriminate use of remdesivir, which is being reported from different parts of the country, what would you say to people at large? Because earlier we heard the health ministry say that remdesivir is not supposed to be used in home settings, it's not supposed to be used in mild and asymptomatic cases, it's only supposed to be used for hospitalized patients who are on ventilator. And today itself we've seen how there has been a reduction in prices of remdesivir. There's also been a war of words between the centre and the state, with the centre telling Maharashtra government that there is no direction that it has given to various exporters to not use or divert those stocks that they had kept for the export purposes for domestic use.
Yeah, that's a very pertinent question, and I think we must remove some misgivings about these antiviral drugs, both Favipiravir and Remdesivir. These are two antiviral drugs which were approved last year by DCGI for on emergency authorization, and both do not have definite action against this coronavirus, although they are antiviral medication. So if you look at the data from a very large randomized trial conducted by WHO in 2020 on 7,000 patients who were moderate to severity of COVID in several countries, and when they analyzed this data in November 2020, when they compared, half of the patient received remdesivir, half of the patient did not receive remdesivir, and when they compared the mortality, the ICU stay, the people going on ventilator, and virus clearance, actually there was no difference between the two groups. So basically the WHO actually recommends against use of remdesivir left, right and center. The only they say, writer, is that you can still give remdesivir under a trial, and it is not yet established that it works, and it works significantly better than placebo. So that is the status of remdesivir. So we have created a hype, and our medical professionals are also responsible for this hype, because they give so much hope in remdesivir that patient and their relatives think if they don't get remdesivir, they will not improve or they will not survive. That is not the case. Survival of severe COVID does not depend on remdesivir. It does depend on the lung condition, how much lung has been involved with pneumonia, and if the lung involvement is much more, then naturally the outcome is dependent upon that, not on remdesivir. So I think people must grasp this reality that remdesivir is not a panacea, that every patient will survive who gets remdesivir and every patient will die who does not receive remdesivir. I think that is something people have to understand. Doctors have to understand, those who are dealing with these patients. When they put a lot of focus on something, the patient starts thinking that there is some magic in this, but there is no magic here. So if there is a strong indication, if there is a lot of viremia, a lot of fever because of the COVID, then maybe there may be a utility of remdesivir. Otherwise, for lung condition, remdesivir may actually harm in some patients. It has harm. It has side effects. It is not that it is devoid of side effects. So I think people have to understand that. The doctors have to understand that, and that's how judicious use of medication is. That is what is called for. Because when we create so much hype, you see people are paying through the nose for this procuring this remdesivir, and then it is going in short supply, and people take advantage of that. Black marketing starts. Then they basically spurious remdesivir. I read somewhere or heard
Yes,
that there is
Dr.
some
Mishra.
spurious remdesivir is also in circulation. So these are the drawbacks of when we create a hype for a medication.
Absolutely. Now the price of remdesivir has been capped. But crucial advice coming in from the two doctors. Thank you so much, Dr. Mishra and Dr. Dhameja, for joining us on this.
Thank you.
Well, the global COVID-19 situation presents a grim picture, with death toll crossing the 3 million mark. Here are the day's major COVID-related developments from different parts of the world.
The global death toll due to coronavirus topped a staggering 3 million on Saturday amid repeated setbacks in the worldwide vaccination campaign and a deepening crisis in places such as Brazil, India and France. Deaths are on the rise again worldwide, running at around 12,000 per day on an average. New cases are climbing as well, eclipsing 700,000 a day. United States is the worst hit country in terms of COVID-19 deaths at 5,64,759, followed by Brazil, Russia and Mexico. Australia will continue the review of coronavirus vaccines after the death of a 48-year-old woman, which was likely linked to the inoculation. On Friday, Australia reported the fatality, the country's first, from blood clots in a recipient of AstraZeneca's COVID-19 shot.
Very sadly and agonisingly for the family that this woman passed in hospital, so we extend our deepest and most profound condolences and sympathy to the family.
The situation in Argentina is worsening. The capacity of intensive care in a hospital on the outskirts of Buenos Aires has been pushed to the limits with the explosion of COVID-19 cases. In a hospital in La Plata, outside Argentina's capital, the signs of the struggle with the rising cases were clear. The average of the new cases increased 89% nationwide in the last 2 weeks.
There has been an incredible explosion of cases, and suddenly we had to start taking hasty closure measures. Unfortunately, we are at between 95 and 100% intensive care bed occupancy. We do not have beds to provide optimal intensive care treatment for patients.
Brazilian Health Ministry official asked women on Friday to delay getting pregnant until the worst of the pandemic passes, saying the virus variant that is devastating the South American country appears to affect expectant mothers more than earlier versions of the virus.
The clinical experience of a specialist shows that this new variant acts more aggressively in pregnant women.
German Chancellor Angela Merkel received her first shot of AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine on Friday. Germany's vaccine regulator has recommended limiting the use of AstraZeneca's vaccine to those aged over 60, citing risks of a rare clotting condition. Pregnant women in Britain should get a COVID-19 vaccine made by Pfizer or Moderna because there is more real-world data to show that they are safe, British public body that advises on vaccinations said on Friday. The Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunization said around 90,000 pregnant women have been vaccinated in the United States, mainly with the 2 American vaccines, without any safety concerns being raised.
We've now got some safety information from the United States program where both the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccine have been being used extensively over the last few weeks and given to very large numbers of pregnant women. And this finally means that we've got a decent safety database for at least 2 out of the 3 vaccines that are now being used in the UK.
France has been witnessing a sharp rise in COVID-19 deaths in recent days. The number of bodies received to be buried has more than tripled in Paris region. France has the world's 8th highest COVID-19 death toll.
This was indeed a peak in March and April 2020. But this activity was sustained during all of the second semester of 2020.
In the past 30 days, France has registered on an average just over 300 new COVID-19 deaths per day or 9,000 per month compared to nearly 16,000 per month during the second lockdown. Bureau Report, DD.
Our second top focus tonight, when US President Joe Biden held his first in-person bilateral meeting with Japanese Prime Minister Suga at the White House, the two leaders showed a united front on China. Over a month after the Quad leaders met, they reiterated their commitment to continue to work with allies and partners, including Australia and India, through the Quad, which they said has never been stronger, to build a free, open, accessible, diverse and thriving Indo-Pacific. Citing concerns over the use of coercion by China, attempts to unilaterally change the status quo in the region and human rights violations in Hong Kong and Xinjiang, they agreed on the need to share concerns directly with China. Here's more on what transpired in the summit.
The United States and Japan vowed on Friday to stand firm together against an assertive China and to step up cooperation on climate change and next generation technology as President Joe Biden made his first summit a show of alliance unity. After waiting nearly 3 months for his first foreign guest due to the COVID-19 pandemic, Biden told Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga that Japan enjoyed the United States' ironclad support on security issues and beyond. Prime Minister Suga was clear in saying that efforts must be made to establish a stable and constructive relationship with China while keeping a close partnership with the United States and other like-minded nations.
We committed to working together to take on the challenges from China and on issues like the East China Sea, the South China Sea, as well as North Korea, to ensure a future of a free and open Indo-Pacific.
We also had serious talks on China's influence over the peace and prosperity with the Pacific and the world at large. We agreed to oppose any attempts to change the status quo by force or coalition in the East and South China Sea and intimidation of others in the region. At the same time, we agreed on the necessity for each of us to engage in frank dialogue with China and in so doing to pursue stability of international relations while upholding universal values.
A joint statement did not hold back, raising concerns over Beijing's growing maritime moves, its clampdowns in Hong Kong and Xinjiang, and growing tensions over Taiwan. The statement reiterated that the US-Japan Security Treaty covers the Japanese-administered Senkaku Islands, one of the several areas in the region where Beijing, which calls them the Diaoyu, has increasingly shown its might. The joint statement also stressed on the continued strategic cooperation with allies and partners, including with Australia and India through the Quad, which has never been stronger, to build the free, open, accessible, diverse and thriving Indo-Pacific we all seek. It expressed support to ASEAN's unity and centrality in the Indo-Pacific, as well as the ASEAN's outlook on the Indo-Pacific. Prime Minister Suga also brought up the issue of discrimination against Asians.
I discussed the increase of discrimination and violence against Asian people across the US with the President Biden and agreed that discrimination by race cannot be permitted in any society. President Biden's comment that discrimination and violence cannot be allowed was extremely encouraging for me.
Prime Minister Suga said that he told President Biden that he was committed to moving forward with the Summer Olympic Games in Japan despite the coronavirus pandemic. Joe Biden offered his support. The Chinese embassy in the US blasted the US-Japan joint statement, alleging that it grossly interferes in China's internal affairs regarding Taiwan, Hong Kong and Xinjiang, and ironically attempts to sow division in the Asia-Pacific while trying to forge a nuclear-contaminated Indo-Pacific. Suga was the first foreign leader to hold face-to-face talks with Biden since the US president assumed office in January. Bureau Report, DD India.
And that brings us to our In Focus tonight. It is Biden-Suga Summit. Leaders call out Chinese coercion. To discuss that, we are joined by Ambassador Vishnu Prakash, ex-envoy to Canada and South Korea and former Foreign Office spokesman. Ambassador Prakash, welcome to Newsnight. Let me start with a tweet by Japanese Prime Minister after the bilateral summit. He said that in my meeting with President Biden, we agreed that it is precisely because there are various outstanding concerns in our relations with China that frank dialogue with China is necessary. The joint statement that you may have read ticks off China on a number of issues: its belligerence in South China Sea, East China Sea, Taiwan Strait, in what it's doing in the Xinjiang province, and human rights violations in Hong Kong and more, and calls for a free and open Indo-Pacific. Is the heat further rising on China?
Very much so, and I have rarely seen such a frank statement where country is not only named but is chastised. And apparently for the first time, or after a very long gap, Japan frontally mentioned Taiwan, which is something very sensitive for China. Interestingly and significantly, I would say, President Biden reiterated that they will do everything, recommitted themselves to the alliance, and said that they will use full range of capabilities, including nuclear, and also reiterated that the Article 5 of the treaty applies to Senkaku Island. So it is rare to see such an explicit, unambiguous statement, and the very fact that the very first meeting, that in-person meeting that President Joe Biden had was with the Japanese Prime Minister. The next meeting that he is going to have is with the President of South Korea. It is quite significant, and the message goes out loud and clear.
Absolutely, Ambassador Prakash. Is the churn in the Indo-Pacific then no longer beneath the surface? It's very much real and palpable, and players or powers in the region are no longer reticent about the problems that they have with coercive ways of China.
Yes, I think your characterization is spot on. Countries, the Quad nations and even some of the Quad Plus members were quite careful to couch it suitably, to frame the Quad and Indo-Pacific construct as something which is beneficial for peace and stability and not directed against any country. But today the problem is that China, the gloves are off, and China is engaging in aggression with any and every neighbor, using economic coercion, military coercion, and the threat perception. They are determined rather to change the geopolitical order, to create a China-centric regional and global order, which is not based on rule of law, but based on rule of power. And that is something that democratic countries, right-minded countries which believe in rule of law cannot accept. So there is no choice but to send a message out to China upfront that, look, every country wants to engage with China so long as China plays by the rule book and not disregards the norms and regulations. But if push comes to shove, like-minded countries will join hands to thwart the aggression of China. That is the message that goes out.
Master Prakash, are those challenging the very nomenclature of Indo-Pacific now having to acknowledge that this is very much here to stay, and that there is no going back on this new idiom around which the world is configuring, even though there is a reaction that's come in from the Chinese embassy in the United States saying that this is a gross interference in China's internal affairs and hitting out at both United States and Japan?
Well, China has a very interesting frame of mind. They believe that they have a mandate from heaven. And because they have the mandate from heaven, the earthly norms, earthly regulations, minor things like treaties and conventions do not apply to them. So even when they waged a naked aggression against Indian soldiers, attacked the Indian soldiers in Galwan on the 15th-16th June night, their narrative was that it was the Indian side's fault. Foreign Minister Wang Yi is on record to say that in 5,000 years of Chinese history, it has been a permanently peaceful nation with not one aggressive DNA in its body. Now, what do you do with such a power? which believes that you can say something 100 times and it will require a ring of truth. But the fact is that China is being very aggressive, is not following any rules, and that aggression is the result where countries, one after the other, have realized that it cannot be business as usual. And it is a reaction to that. So they may say what they want to say, it is for domestic consumption, but I guess the mask is off and the true face of China is evident for everybody to see. And it is clear to Quad countries, clear to Indo-Pacific countries, clear to Europe, Asia and beyond that like-minded countries have to join hands to check the aggression and expansionist ambitions of China.
Can it be said, Ambassador Prakash, that all powers, major and minor in the region particularly, want to engage with China, they want to continue to engage with China, but they want to set the terms of the engagement with China and not allow China to set the terms of engagement through its belligerence?
You are absolutely right. Every country, you see, China is a reality. China is a major country. We have a 3,600 kilometer long undelineated border with China. There is a maritime boundary between Japan and China and with other countries. It is a fact that every country hitherto has been engaging with China and they want to continue engaging with China. Nobody is setting terms. And certainly the Chinese terms which goes against the normative behavior is not acceptable. All that the Committee of Nations is saying is there are certain global norms. There are certain rules and regulations in place. There are certain behavior patterns that we have to follow. So please respect that. That is all that they are saying, but China does not. Now take the case of how they gobbled up the Scarborough Shoal of Philippines, and 2016 when the International Court of Arbitration declared it illegal, they just got aside. Now, if you are not going to respect any rules, regulations, norms, and compromise institutions to further your gain, then that is not acceptable. So that is the whole effort of the international community to convey a message to China that they will not allow aggression and expansionism and coercion to continue from China. There will be a cost to such misadventure.
So the message is going out loud and clear to China. Thank you so much, Ambassador Prakash, for having joined us with your inputs. And there is news just coming in. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has held a high-level COVID review meeting, and that meeting has just concluded. Prime Minister reviewed the status of supply of Remdesivir and other medicines in that meeting. Prime Minister reviewed the status of supply of Remdesivir and other medicines, like I said, and the Prime Minister said that there is no substitute to testing, tracking and treatment. Testing, tracking and treatment must continue. The Prime Minister also said all necessary measures must be taken to ramp up the availability of hospital beds for COVID patients. Prime Minister also said local administrations need to be proactive and sensitive to people's concerns, and that installation of approved medical oxygen plants should be sped up. The Prime Minister also saying that utilize the entire national capacity to ramp up vaccine production. So key takeaways of Prime Minister's review meeting. Arun is joining us. Arun, the Prime Minister emphasizing on the need to ensure that there is adequate availability of medical oxygen, of vaccines and of all that is needed to fight this war against COVID-19.
Meeting is concerned on the oxygen front. Now, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has directed that the installation of approved medical oxygen plants should be sped up, and 162 PSA oxygen plants are being installed in 32 states and union territories from the PM CARES Fund. So this is a big takeaway. You can say that as far as oxygen is concerned, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, met various stakeholders and government officials, and this was the top dominating agenda as far as oxygen point and oxygen infrastructure is concerned. So 162 PSA oxygen plants are being installed as of now in 32 states and union territories from PM CARES Fund. So that's one of the big takeaways. This will ensure that there is no deficit as far as oxygen in our country is concerned. Now, the officers who interacted with the Prime Minister also informed that 1 lakh cylinders are being procured and they will be supplied to states very soon. And the officers have, also given the debrief to the Prime Minister that they're in constant supply with 12 high burden states in assessing the current and future requirements of the medical oxygen. Now there are, a supply mapping plan is also being drafted. So basically a supply mapping plan for 12 high burden states till 30th April has also been undertaken. That means these are those 12 high burden states whereby, there is deficit as far as oxygen is concerned. And there is a mapping plan also being, designed so that there is no deficit as far as oxygen is concerned. So yes, Prime Minister Narendra Modi clearly focused upon the fact that testing, treatment and of course tracking, all these things should be ensured, and there is no substitute for testing, tracking and treatment. And of course Prime Minister Narendra Modi clearly highlighted this fact that all necessary measures must be taken to ramp up the availability of hospital beds for COVID patients. Because there are certain states, there are points coming out that there is a non-availability of COVID beds as of now. So Prime Minister Narendra Modi clearly ensuring and asked all the stakeholders that all necessary measures must be taken to ramp up the availability of COVID hospital beds as of now. And local administrations need to be proactive and sensitive to people's concerns. Now we have seen this fact that micromanagement, micromanagement is the need of the hour, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi clearly mentioning this point that the local administration should come forward. They should be proactive in their approach. They should, preempt and proactively come forward, and they should be sensitive to the people's concern as of now. And of course, also mentioned this point about the remdesivir. We know this fact that today only the government has slashed the prices of remdesivir, and we know this fact that Prime Minister also reviewed the status of the supply of remdesivir. Now the production will be doubled till January to February. Only 27 to 28 lakhs vials were available as far as the remdesivir is concerned. But looking at the sharp surge as far as demand of remdesivir is concerned, this production will be increased or maybe doubled in this month of April. So that's the idea that how can, the deficit of remdesivir, the necessary drug and the injections as well, and of course the supply of oxygen, how can that be ensured? These are some of the big takeaways that were discussed when Prime Minister Narendra Modi met with important stakeholders and government officials today.
So there was a comprehensive focus on all that is required as resources in this fight against COVID-19. The Prime Minister reviewing the availability of medical oxygen, of vaccines, of the production of a drug like remdesivir, which is being widely used in treatment of COVID-19. It's part of the national treatment protocol of COVID-19. Thank you, Arun, for having joined us with those inputs. Now, a quick wrap on what's making news around the world. In the United States, the fatal shooting of 20-year-old black man at dawned riot in Minneapolis suburb had sparked violent protests across the country, which continued even on the 6th consecutive night. The police have arrested hundreds of protesters after a clash between the two outside Minnesota's Brooklyn Center Police Headquarters. Groups of demonstrators taunted sheriff's deputies lined up behind a chain-link fence in front of the building, throwing objects over the barrier. The officers in turn periodically approached the wall to douse those on the other side with tear gas and flashbangs. In another incident, fires were seen in parts of downtown Portland after protesters gathered to protest against police killings across the country. Construction equipment and bins were set on fire near an Apple store in Portland. Meanwhile, incidents of police violence continued to be reported in the United States. At least 2 people were killed during a shootout with a San Antonio police officer on Friday. The incident that claimed the life of a driver and a passenger in Texas was a casual encounter that abruptly turned into a life-or-death struggle, wounding an officer and another passenger. Pro-democracy protesters clashed with security forces in Myanmar's Mandalay on Saturday after the group gathered to show support to the National Unity Government. Political leaders including Aung San Suu Kyi and leaders of the anti-coup protests had announced the formation of a national unity government on Friday. Earlier in the day, Myanmar's junta released over 23,000 prisoners from jails across the country under a New Year amnesty. Saturday is the first day of the traditional New Year in Myanmar. Anti-coup dissidents have used the holiday as an opportunity to protest against the growing death toll and mass arrests. Protesters in Yangon continued to call for their New Year strike on Saturday. The funeral of the Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Philip, began at St. George's Chapel on Saturday after members of the royal family walked in procession behind the coffin. The coffin was carried in a modified Land Rover, which the Duke had helped design. Prince Philip died at Windsor Castle on the 9th of April at the age of 99. The ceremonial royal funeral remembered Prince Philip's unwavering loyalty to the Queen and service to the nation. The order of service for the funeral was agreed by the late royal himself, with no sermon to be delivered, in line with his wishes. The service was conducted by the Dean of Windsor, with the Archbishop of Canterbury pronouncing the blessing. The service followed a minute's silence across the UK. More than 730 members of the armed forces are taking part in the event, but there was a limit of 30 mourners at St. George's Chapel under COVID restrictions. Campaigning gained momentum for the remaining 3 phases of polling in West Bengal, with Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressing rallies in Asansol and Gangarampur. Home Minister Amit Shah held a roadshow in Amdanga and addressed rallies in Osgram and Chapra. And West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee addressed 3 rallies. Polling will be held for 114 seats in the remaining 3 phases of polling in the state.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressed election rallies in Asansol of Paschim Bardhaman district and Gangarampur Assembly segment of Dakshin Dinajpur district. On target was the West Bengal Chief Mamata Banerjee. Prime Minister alleged that in the past decade, she has been standing as the wall against development of the state.
दीदी वोट बैंक के लिए कहां तक जाएगी आप? सच्चाई ये है कि दीदी ने कुछ बिहार में मारे गए लोगों की मृत्यु से भी अपना सियासी फायदा करने की सोची। ये बंगाल की जनता अब आपको आजीवन एक सर्टिफिकेट देने वाली है, भूतपूर्व मुख्यमंत्री लेके घूमते रहना।
Accusing the ruling Trinamool Congress of running syndicates across the state and Mafia Raj in Asansol, PM Modi promised to implement all welfare schemes of the central government in West Bengal if the BJP is elected to power in the state. Meanwhile, Home Minister Amit Shah also continued his blitzkrieg campaigning for the remaining 3 phases of the polls in West Bengal. Addressing the rallies in Osgram and Chapra, he brought up the problem of infiltration in the region. He questioned Mamata Banerjee as well as the left governments for failing to address the issue. He said the entire Nadia district has become a hub of trafficking, fake notes, drugs and even cow smuggling.
घुसपैठ कोई रोक सकता है तो भारतीय जनता पार्टी की सरकार रोक सकती है मित्रों, और कोई नहीं। मैं आपको बताने आया हूं, 2 मई को भाजपा की सरकार बना दो, उसके बाद में सरहद के उस पार से इंसान तो क्या परिंदा भी पैर नहीं मार पाएगा मित्रों।
Amit Shah also conducted a roadshow in the Amdanga Assembly segment of North 24 Parganas. On the other hand, Trinamool Congress chief Mamata Banerjee also addressed 3 rallies on Saturday. At Kalsi in East Bardhaman, she accused the BJP of spreading falsehood, alleging that the BJP is continuously trying to mislead the people against her party.
In the coming days, parents don't have to worry about their children anymore. It will provide credit cards to students worth 10 lakh rupees without any bank guarantee.
Polling will be held for 114 seats in the remaining 3 phases of elections. Election Commission has banned any form of physical campaigning from 7 p.m. till 10 a.m. for these phases. The silence period has also been extended to 72 hours. The biggest challenge before both the party candidates as well as the state and election commission authorities is ensuring COVID-19 protocols are followed during the campaign. Bureau Report, DD India.
And with that, we come to the close of this edition of Newsnight. But as I step out of the studio, I'll be moving out of the safe environment here, and thus I'll be wearing a mask. Would request you as well and appeal to you to wear masks as well whenever you move out. Thank you.